Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Spoilers, the movie review show where we review a film with the assumption that you have seen the film already. We are going to get into spoilers about this film, and this film this week is the new film, Godzilla. One that we've been looking forward to a lot, loving the trailer. So we're going to talk about it, but you've been warned. We are going to give spoilers in this review. So if you haven't seen the film yet and you're really worried about spoilers, then just add this video to your favorites list and come on back another time. Anyway, my name is John Campe. I'm the editor-in-chief of AMC Movie News. Joining me for this review of Godzilla, first of all, sitting right beside me is Mr. Dennis Zen.
Thanks for having me.
Right beside him is Mr. Christian Harloff.
Godzilla!
Our very own Miri Jetikin.
I say Gojira.
And this is being recorded on Friday, May the 16th, which is also John Schnepp's birthday. That was a great
Not scary
Godzilla
at
thing.
all.
Pretty good.
All right, so here's how this is going to
Not
work.
scary.
We're going to talk about the positives of Godzilla. We're going to talk about what we feel are the negatives. We're going to talk about it overall as a picture. And then we're going to give it a score at the end. So let's get started. Dennis, let's start with you. You're coming out of Godzilla, and I'm going to ask you, hey, what was good about this film? How would you answer that?
Well, obviously, the last 30 minutes or so in sequences. I mean, there's a lot of teasing in this film.
Right.
And, like, in terms of action-wise, most of the good action comes at the end. So I think a lot of people will be very satisfied after they leave the movie theater. So visual effects were great for it. I think there was a lot of suspense and thriller type stuff with it that I don't know, it might have turned people off in terms of the length of it, like just dragging it out a little bit. But
Well, those are your negatives.
yeah, okay. But positives, though, I mean, it does deliver in the end. Like, they do tease you throughout the movie, but when they finally get down to it with the major Godzilla fights between the Mutos, you got to see them fight not just one, but two of them at the same time, that part delivers. So, and they captured the personality of Godzilla, which the last one did not. The
Right.
1998 one
Yeah.
was just a giant lizard that was more fitting of Jurassic Park than a Godzilla
Ooh, good
movie.
example. Yeah.
This one, like, you felt like Godzilla's personality, like he was that anti-hero, that he was there kind of almost begrudgingly saving humanity.
Right.
Like, he was there and you knew he was kind of a good guy, but also at the same time he looked at humans with disdain.
Right. I thought Aaron Taylor Johnson was actually quite good in the film, and I had my doubts about him going into it. And one of the things that I thought this film did very well, that I was really afraid that a movie like this in today's movie age would be losing the humanity. And I actually felt the job the job they did in still making this film about, you know, you can make a movie about Godzilla, but if it's not communicating on a human level to how we can understand it and we can kind of viscerally experience it, vicariously through the characters on the screen, then it loses a lot of impact and just becomes a video game cutscene. And I thought they did a pretty darn good job making still this movie, even though it's about Godzilla and the Metro, it's still a human story. And I kind of like the way they did that quite a bit. The visual effects, off the chart. Just off the chart. I never saw one shot in this movie that I went, yeah, that doesn't quite look right to me. Like, never once did I feel that way. So I thought they did that really good. Surprisingly to me, I thought the score was perfect. It was very understated for most of the film, but I thought that played in well to what was going on screen. Bryan Cranston, he's always good. I mean, so you almost don't even have to mention how good he is. But yeah, overall, the visual effects, the action sequence when they do finally get the monsters fighting, the citywide destruction that you see, it really did feel like this is a global problem. And I remember when that damn thing laid its eggs and you saw how many there were. I love it when a movie gives you that feeling of, we are effed. Like, we are just totally effed. And when I saw that, the way they set up that shot, Edwards, the way he set that shot up, and he's, Aaron Taylor Johnson's looking across and you see all these mini versions of that. He's like, we are totally screwed unless something drastic happens here. So, yeah, those ones that jump out to me. Christian, what about you?
I'm going to echo a lot of the same things that you guys said, but for me, it was they redeemed themselves from that crap pile that was the 1998 version of Godzilla.
Yeah.
And I was a big Godzilla fan as a kid. So to see him back on screen, he is back. I mean, you go back again. The last 20 minutes alone are worth to spend the money on this movie and the IMAX. I saw it in IMAX. It is absolutely worth it in IMAX. You see him at this scale, and again, it doesn't feel like just the special effects thing. It really feels like Godzilla is back.
Yeah.
And what it felt like was watching a UFC fight, and the undercard is kind of going along, but then the main event just delivers.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, wait a minute. That was exactly what I wanted to see. A knockout, and the fire scene when he rips the thing's head off and breathes in his fire. The way again, bringing back the fight analogy, it's like if two people are just dancing around the whole time and then it's a decision. You're like, okay, that was fun for a little bit, but when it's a knockout, this is a knockout. And so again, just going there, I thought Bryan Cranston was amazing. We'll get into the negatives with him of what I would have liked to see more with his character. And I thought the Olsen girl was great. I really thought she brought a
she's
lot
turning into a rock solid go-to actress.
She
in this
to me,
business.
she brought the emotion. Like when you were talking about the human story, John, she was the one that was able to, out of all the characters, I connected to her the most. And I felt like, again, she was at the end when Godzilla is fighting the two of them, that as you cared about her and you're watching what's going on there. But yeah, just I wanted Godzilla to fight. I still want to watch him fight right now. I wish that it didn't stop, and I've been watching it for a week, just watching him fight. That's how great it was.
There's that part, I like that you brought up the fire scene, because I thought what we were about to get when the second fire shot.
Yeah.
I was getting flashes of King Kong fighting the
T-Rex.
T-Rex. When he grabs it by the jaw, I thought, oh, this is going to be gruesome. He's going to rip its jaw open just like King Kong did. And then he looks down into it and breathes fire right down its throat. I'm like, woo!
Yeah,
Like,
when he's holding his head up, and then when he's like, and then he just takes a nap. I love it, because you know he's not gone. Everyone else,
I'm tired.
He's exhausted. And he just gets up.
Well,
He's like,
I'd
all
be
right, guys, I kind of
exhausted.
did my thing. I'm gonna go swim. Call me when King Kong wakes up, and I'll fight him next.
Like, I'm not going to say this is not my favorite movie of the year. That was my favorite shot of the year so far.
cool.
That one shot is my favorite of the year so far. Anyway, Emira, you saw the film. You saw it with us last night.
I saw it with you.
So what were some of the positives for you?
Well, first of all, it was my first AMC Prime experience.
Oh.
So I think for that experience, this movie is pretty perfect when you want to go and have a real experience
It's
where you can kick your
awesome.
feet up and feel the seats rumble and all that stuff. You mentioned shots. I think this film has some of the most beautiful shots of any monster movie I've ever seen. I think some of the cinematography here was so beautiful, and I think Gareth Edwards did this with monsters with no money, and I think he's really great at creating an evocative world around the monster and really building out that mythology without having to hit you on the head with it. And he did a really good job of walking that line of being subtle, but also giving you these eye-popping graphics that were so beautiful, or graphic images rather. And I thought the design of the creatures was great. I thought Godzilla looked, I like wanted to hang out with Godzilla. I was like, I just want to look at you. It was like looking at a picture of something beautiful. I mean, he was beautiful. I mean, he just looked amazing. All the detail in his eyes and his face when you finally do get to see him. And I agree, Bryan Cranston for me was the emotional center of the film, whatever emotional center there was. And I just think he brings such a vulnerability and a pathos, and you really care about him and feel connected to him, and I loved that, and I loved every minute of him on screen. I do like the fact that this is a Pacific situation, that we're seeing San Francisco get annihilated and not New York or DC. It was kind of refreshing to see a city that's so beautiful and so iconic, but that doesn't often get that treatment in a disaster movie or a monster movie. It was getting destroyed, and it's in a way kind of more heartbreaking because it's so fresh. And I think the score, I think Alexandre Desplat did a really nice job of bringing up the tension and making the score part of the experience. And sometimes the score can get lost a little bit, but I really liked it, and I just thought the world that is created around these monsters, and that these monsters are so much bigger than us, and their mythology is older than us. And using all that old footage, like the stock film reels and stuff that they created or used, I thought that was so smart and clever how they kind of tied in a little bit of the real history of nuclear warfare and our relationship with Japan. I thought that was all really, really well done. So there's a lot to like about this movie. That's a lot.
Schnepp, you watched it just before your birthday party.
That's right.
Before you got hammered.
I went to.
So you saw it clear-headed.
Yeah, I saw it at the competitions theater, Man's Chinese. But hey, they had a giant Godzilla statue outside. It was cool, and a lot of people were, obviously when you go see it on a Thursday, you're going with like diehard fans. I grew up with Godzilla. He was my friend when I was a little kid.
That does
Him
not
and
surprise me.
Mothra and Rodan and Ghidra.
How would
they were my
Godzilla
pals.
ask the girl out?
That's right. I want Godzilla to come with me. So, yeah, I also experienced the 1998 Godzilla. I went to the 12 midnight screening. Nowadays, it's more civilized. It's a 7 or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock.
Fell asleep at 12:10.
Yeah, back then it was like, oh my God, get out at 3. You're like, what did I just experience?
I still got to go to work.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I'm talking about the movie, the 1998 one. So this one was definitely a refresher course in Godzilla. This was like a brand new take on Godzilla, but bringing everything that was awesome about Godzilla from, I believe the first film was 1955. Is that right?
I think
something in the 50s, and it just that Godzilla was the good guy, and that was kind of an unsaid thing that. Which still the military fired on him, which you're like, he's trying to save the bridge. Look, he's holding it. They're like, shoot at him. But that just fits in with the 60s Godzilla dumb military. Like, even though it's like, it seems that Godzilla is on our side. It doesn't matter, nuke him. You know, we're like, he's a monster, destroy him. But he's swimming with you guys, you know?
Like the dolphins.
Yeah, like a dolphin. So I love the imagery, the takes on Godzilla, making him like a shark. Like his fins are now like this giant, massive shark fins. You know, there was some really cool original takes on transforming this iconography into a new way of looking at him. The Mutos worked out really great. I loved some of these scenes, like when one of the Mutos, after it just destroys Las Vegas, it's walking away and it's like kind of a far shot. Everything in this film, and I remember when they hired Gareth, the take was like, let's get that dude from Monsters because he can make everything feel like it's happening. And I know that they weren't talking about it like a found footage running around with a camera type thing, not a Cloverfield thing, but like you're in the action and you're surrounded by creatures that are 700 feet tall. And I think that he was able to accomplish that in this movie for most of it to the benefit, some to the detriment. We'll get into that later. But the feeling of size was there. Like you're watching monsters fight and you're a little tiny human. You're lucky to survive this. There's a lot of sequences where a lot of the main characters barely survive. And hundreds, if not thousands of other humans die horribly. It's not like... This is a epic monster movie where these monsters aren't fighting in an abandoned, it's Detroit where there's no one in like a 5-mile radius. These are people.
Why didn't Godzilla take the fight outside of the city to spare the civilians?
Where was the Man of Steel?
Little Man of Steel.
So I mean every scene in Godzilla the movie with Godzilla in it, I loved. I thought it was fantastic, and I wish there was more of it. So,
to go back to what you were saying there, too, one of the other things I liked about this film was that they don't tiptoe over the fact that when you have two, 140-story tall creatures fighting, it's going to be messy. Like we saw, and they did that great with the Hawaii shots and with the San Francisco shots that, like even Godzilla just coming up out of the ocean caused flooding and people died.
Right.
I mean, Godzilla just having to get to the other side of that bridge. People died. He doesn't have it out for humanity, but just if you got something that big walking around.
He's a bull in a china closet. What are you going to do?
Yes, exactly. And I like that. But of course, the dog lived. I remember that
so
shot.
happy.
Once the dog tied up on the tree and the water's coming in, thinking, this is going to be a horrific shot.
That dog's going to outrun all
Magically,
those
the dog got off its leash.
Somehow he was able to snap off.
Yeah, it was the Independence Day shot.
I love it.
The dog always gets away.
They should.
One thing I was going to say about the Las Vegas scene is that one Muto's walking away, and I think it was an homage to like the old Godzilla monster movies. The way it was moving, it looked like a puppet. Like a lot of it was
like a Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah, it was like a Ray Harryhausen, and a lot of it had that power of like almost like Pacific Rim, where they were like, it's a man in suit, only it's CG, and we're gonna bring the best of the man in suit to life, but with CG technology. So that was one of my favorite things.
You brought that up, the fact that just the team, the tag teaming of the Mutas against Godzilla, because he was handling one of them pretty good, and then every time another one would come up, and you could just see it in his face. He's like, "Oh, come on!" And that goes to show that it's more than just a CGI fest. Like you really felt the emotion, like in any good cinematic fight. Like it's more than just punching and kicking. It's about the emotion that's going on in the fight, and I think like something like the Raid 2 does that so well as well. But this one, you're watching the tag team in the back and forth, and when you see Godzilla sneak up again after he's been knocked out, it's just like you're so in the fight, and I thought that was done perfect.
Oh, and you know what? Another thing that was really good about this, sometimes some movies need exposition to bring us, the audience, along with it. And sometimes that can get pretty annoying. Make Ken Watanabe the guy giving the exposition, then it's cool. Then it's fine. It's like, he is hunting them.
Yeah.
So
That's all I needed to know, Ken.
Yeah,
Let them fight.
And
Let
he's
them
so
fight.
stoic, you know. He
Yeah.
has such a stoic, kind of timeless quality. And to your point of it feeling like an old monster movie, they did such a good job of making an homage to those movies without, you know, paying too much service at the expense of their own voice. Like it did a good job of that, of kind of nodding to its predecessors without making it about that.
I would like to see, like the Street Fighter graphic of Ken Watanabe right before fight.
You know there's going to be 100 memes of that online
Yeah.
now. But so here's
That's
a question I have, though. Like, so I'm not really clear about this coming out of the theater, but am I mistaken in saying that Ken Watanabe said that Godzilla was basically awakened by the fact that those two other creatures started
Yeah.
their pulses, whatever.
Yeah.
So in that sense, he's almost set up like the icon of him is almost set up as like he is a guardian of Earth. That
Yeah.
when he is needed
that
these other
headline
creatures
at the
show up.
end. Remember the headline at the end?
Savior
In the
of
San
the
Francisco-
City Savior.
Yeah.
That was
Well,
the
speaking
thing.
of
the
that,
monsters.
speaking
That
of
was bad.
speaking of that,
But
they
that's-
did the news sequences all like throughout the movie, really fit in, and
Yeah.
like those were the scenes that people laughed at. They're
Yeah,
like,
'cause
oh,
it's hokey.
So
Yeah.
you guys said it was awful though too, but don't you think that was intentionally awful?
no,
Yeah.
no,
Like,
I
that's-
agree
that's
with
what-
you.
that's
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
point of
I say it's a
homage.
good thing that
Right.
he did
No,
that.
I know. Yeah, because
Like,
I guess
Savior of the city. It's like
right.
Question mark?
Right, but I think that got a laugh on purpose. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
that
on
he was
purpose.
going for
Like
a
it was
laugh.
How about
little
like in
wink.
Vegas, they had the thing on the screen, right? And no one cares because they're gambling. They don't
right,
care.
right,
There's like
right.
monsters right outside.
Right. I think like that type of humor when that was used, I actually got a big laugh out of both those
Yeah.
moments, and I thought that that's what he was going for.
No,
or when
definitely.
the mom's like telling the kid, turn off the TV, and he's like watching
Right, yeah,
monsters coming to their
I thought
city.
that stuff was done well. That's the type of stuff that Michael Bay does poorly that I
Yeah.
thought Edwards did really well in this one.
Okay, well then let's talk about some of the negatives of the film, and let me get started on this one. One of the biggest negatives to me, well, two big negatives to me, and they both revolve around Bryan Cranston. One is the trailers. I remember having this discussion with somebody. I'd said on the show one day that Bryan Cranston is yet to be given a leading role in a big major film because he's still kind of seen as Heisenberg and all that kind of stuff. Somebody said, "Well, what about Godzilla? He's the lead in Godzilla." It's like, well, I know the trailers look like that, but I'm positive I've heard that this is Aaron Taylor Johnson's movie. But the trailers, it's all Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
It's all Bryan
I think
Cranston.
that's a marketing thing.
No, definitely.
And
yeah.
then
Because
you
he's
go
breaking
into
that.
the film, and he's gone in the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're trying to hide something, Death. You're like,
hey, but did everybody when he died when the bag went up? Did you be like, nah, he's coming back?
Yeah.
Like I thought he was
I
coming
thought
back.
that was a bad move that
Well,
they did that.
me
They
too.
Until I
killed him off.
realized when that bridge fell,
Yeah.
it's like, well, clearly he's okay. But then the thought crossed my mind. Every scene and line I've heard of him in the trailers, he's
Already
now
had.
done.
Exactly.
I think he's dead.
Yeah. They were able to do in 20 minutes what 6 seasons of Breaking Bad couldn't do. Finally,
Kill him?
at the very end. Yeah, finally got him at the end.
Spoiler.
Spoiler.
But okay, so they both. So number one, a little bit of. I'm not gonna say false advertising. I'm gonna say a little bit of misleading advertising, giving big fans of Breaking Bad the sense that, hey, come watch this Bryan Cranston movie, and it's not. I mean, he's gone pretty quick.
Yeah.
But the other thing is this: the whole reason, his importance in the film is completely wiped out. Because remember, Ken Watanabe's character is like, I need to talk to this guy. Why? Because all the original data was destroyed at the original event, and he's actually been monitoring this. Well, haven't you been? You've been here, haven't you? Been monitoring these signals too? But whatever. He's saying all this kind of stuff, and ultimately, what that leads them to is the discovery that there's a second monster, right? Didn't matter. The monster had already woken up, was heading towards Las Vegas. So ultimately, the footprint that Bryan Cranston leaves on this film is nothing. If you take that character out, not the actor, but if you take that character out of the film, nothing unfolds differently. Think about that for a second. Both monsters still wake up. They still converge. Godzilla still wakes up because nothing has changed.
Well, except
because of that character.
except the fact that his craziness makes his son come back. And by that kind of because his son is ultimately the one who burns all this, burns
right,
the
but
egg.
ultimately his importance is just so
Well,
his son
he's-
can be involved.
Right. That's it's minor.
But also, he's kind of the link in the puzzle because they can't. Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins, they can't.
Didn't have the improv.
They didn't understand what the pulse was.
Right.
He was the one that kind of made Watanabe go, "Oh, right, it's a mating call."
But
Like,
then
he-
what
it-
was
it
the importance of that? None, because they found it
Yeah,
out
I
too late.
guess.
The other
Right.
one had woken up.
Right. I think it was more
so
about
it was
just
irrelevant.
getting Aaron Taylor Johnson involved in the film was probably
Yeah.
the biggest move.
I think it was trying to sell books about echolocation. Because now I know about echolocation. Never heard of it before.
But are
Can't
you gonna
wait
buy
to
a
read
book?
that book.
I also think probably the danger of the babies. I mean, maybe they didn't
Yeah,
know
the
about
baby
babies.
danger.
Yeah.
Baby danger.
Well, but there, Aaron Taylor Johnson just stumbled on it, right?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was underneath the baby sack as it walked over him, and then found it when they walked in.
That Sigourney Weaver Ripley shot from
Yeah.
Aliens. Like, look at all.
Yeah.
There's
The pods.
if anything, a lot of negative elements that I found, and then a lot of people were telling me stuff that I didn't even notice. Like, look at this shot from Close Encounters. Look at
Yeah.
this shot. Like, a lot of people have been accusing Gareth of just wantonly stealing from Steven Spielberg.
Some people
Well,
call that
I mean,
homage.
Tarantino does that all the time.
I mean,
so-
Tarantino
My
does it
defense
all
of
the
it was
time.
like, people are like, look, every time someone's in a car and there's mist and they wipe it away, is that going to be Jurassic Park?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Star Wars
within that
is so-
context,
Yeah.
it's like when I was watching the movie, it was like, certain shots were definitely like, I could say shot for shot. That's one of them, the Aliens shot, where it's like basically just replace Ripley with Aaron Taylor, and it's probably timed the same. I feel that's how it felt to me, but I didn't see like some. I was talking with somebody who had like wrote down a list of 30. This woman was angry, but I was like, look, you might be right in some of this. I see you stretching in some ways. In other ways, it's just it's just a combination of a lot of shots, and that's just how it's going to be played out. You can't shoot it in a different way. Well, so that it's not exactly like these other 70 directors from across time and space. Let's shoot it from a satellite. Well, I know, but then you can't see the car. I guess I'll have to just shoot it from inside, and then everyone will accuse me of ripping someone off. You know what I mean? So there's like certain things like that. But for me, I agree. The Bryan Cranston thing was definitely. And Juliette Binoche was in it even less.
I know.
She got
So
knocked off in a
sad.
minute. So
But you know what? When the movie started and we see her in it, I had totally forgotten she was even in the film. So that didn't bother me nearly
Right.
as
And they
much.
showed in the trailer that she was toast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the doors closing
Yeah.
on her. You
Yeah,
knew right
yeah,
away
yeah.
she was
That
dead.
moment was so heartbreaking.
It
though.
was,
It was.
even though I
Moment,
saw it in
to
the
go back
trailer.
to a positive,
Totally
I cried.
impact.
I actually cried because I was like, they have a child together, they have a life together, and like to have to make that decision. That's one of the reasons why I said I felt like he was an emotional center of the film.
Wait, I'm gonna find out if you're lying or not. Ray was sitting beside. Ray, did she actually cry? That's
crying too.
Ray was crying. Ray says,
Ray and I were sitting next to each other. We looked at each other at one point, and we were both like, "Oh God, let's not look at
Tears
each
in
other."
Ray's eyes. I
but
understand.
We're
that's
both a little teary.
Yeah, that's what Cranston does so well. Is
Yeah.
that's why I was so
God.
bummed when he died.
Yeah.
Because for me, what I would have still liked, because I actually thought Aaron Taylor Johnson was very boring and dull in this film.
Really? I
yeah.
thought it was pretty good. Okay.
I thought he had no emotion whatsoever in this movie. Everything was, he reacted to the same way. It was kind of like,
Wait, I'm casting you. he just did a perfect Aaron Taylor.
that's what it did. For me, what I would have liked to have seen, I thought it would have kind of tied it all together, was that Bryan Cranston brings in Aaron Taylor, I can't say his name, Kick-Ass, and he ultimately dies, and then as Cranston has to find his daughter-in-law and grandkid, and that to me would have brought it all back together, like finding it to focus. But yeah, the human element, bringing back your Spielberg point. I didn't mind, and because when I did a review on this, and the comment that I kept going was like, well, it's good sometimes to keep setting up the characters and finally get Godzilla. That's what Jaws did. Please don't compare this movie to
No,
Jaws. You
yeah.
can't,
Right.
because in Jaws, the whole point is you're setting up Brody, you're setting up that town. You're so invested that you don't want to see that shark until the end.
Right.
Movie Godzilla, I want to see like the main character. I want to see him more than they did. That bridge scene was very cool, but that little tease when he's there, like just ready to fight, and then they cut it because the other monster runs away into the right now and flies into the water. To me, I didn't care enough about any of the human characters at that point because Cranston had already crapped out.
Yep.
That I was just like, get me there.
Word.
Get me to the fight now at this point, because I'm not invested the way that you're trying to get me invested, say like Jaws did.
I was going to say that's the detriment of using that perspective of the humans and watching these giants fight, is that when they first did it, the very first time, you saw Godzilla and the Muto, and it's going to go down, and then it cuts to the TV. I laughed because I was
So did I.
That
So
was
did I.
a pretty clever little way to do it.
Right.
That's a little nod to the monsters, dude. Yeah, I get it. It's going to be this small screen thing, and it's like, it was smart. And then they did it again.
Yeah.
And then they did it again.
Yeah.
And then they did it again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm not kidding. They did it again.
Right.
It happened 6 times.
It's like him saying, "Don't worry, don't
Yeah.
worry, don't worry. Here you go, aren't you
And
satisfied?"
honestly, by the 4th time, I was pissed, and I was bored with the human story. I didn't care about
Yeah.
these dumb
Yep.
soldiers. I didn't care. Honestly, when they killed Bryan Cranston, I was like, wow, we're gonna have to follow this dude.
Yep.
Boring.
Exactly.
I mean, and he's a good actor. I mean, I'm not cracking on Aaron Johnson. I think he's done great as Kick-Ass and whatnot. He was just given a really bad, kind of creature to go from Hawaii to Japan. Like, he was miraculously in the perfect spot to be picked up. It's like the boring, easy writing of screenplay writing.
Well, then
where
there
it's
was that storyline with the little kid that he sort of
Oh, yeah.
saves. Like,
The
That's
sort of
family
nowhere.
right there.
Yeah, it's sort of like meant to build out his character a little bit, but it's so thin. It's like
It doesn't build it. I'm just saying,
No,
like
not at all.
the biggest
I
part,
agree.
the biggest negative to me was like I said, all of the scenes with Godzilla were great, and the build up with the characters outside of the family, that the fake family drama that was woven in, I never felt like that attached to the Olsen girl. She just like was looking around.
I had a
and-
huge problem with
yeah,
the
so
Olsen girl.
I thought
Really?
I thought
Wow, we really differ on that because I thought she was
I
great.
like-
I think
I liked
her.
I think
Yeah.
she's great. I don't think she did a bad job. I think she's a wonderful actress. My biggest problem with the movie overall was exactly the wonder bread of these characters.
Yeah.
I felt like I was watching pieces of white bread. Like,
I
it
didn't
was
care about
just
they were
boring.
flat. They were
Right.
flatly
They were flat.
designed.
There was-
And that's
So-
okay though, because Pacific Rim did that, but they gave us what we wanted in that movie. That's the difference between again
not
Pacific
okay for
Rim. No, but that's fine as far as not worrying about if it was a good or a bad movie, but
Yeah.
as far as what they promised they were going to deliver.
Right.
Because the characters in Pacific Rim are. There hardly are any great ones in there. There's somewhat developed ones, but this they were clearly going for. We're really going to get you so invested in these characters emotionally that you're not going to care until Godzilla, and it didn't happen. That's why I brought up the example of Jaws, because you don't care about seeing the shark until you have to.
Right.
Yeah.
In this, like, because they were going for more of the clear-cut, darker drama, even from the trailers. That's what
Yeah.
they were going for, and I don't think that Edwards hit it exactly the way he wanted to.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
knows why? I mean, to go back to Olsen, my problem with her character was that she was completely superfluous. She just played the distraught wife who's trying to find her husband, waiting for him, only makes one real decision in the film, which is to put her kid on a bus when she originally thinks she's going to keep him with her, and then is like running scared from this monster. Like, she was just so sidelined that I felt it was such an underutilization of a great actress. Like, they had an opportunity there that they missed. I feel like they had opportunities with the relationships that they missed. Aaron Taylor Johnson watches his father die, and then it's like, okay, next. Like, there was no emotional depth or center or chord that connected me to any of these characters. And you're right, Cranston died too early. I wanted to see him through. If I could see him through that whole film, it would have been close to perfect
He
for
was
me.
following this for 15
Yeah,
years.
it was his baby.
He was like,
and
my
he's
wife
gone."
died because of this. You
Yeah.
don't get any taste of that.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
and then
Yeah.
you're dead. It was such like a
But here's his son, the younger military guy.
Right.
Here,
Yeah.
let's follow him instead.
Right.
yeah, and,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
didn't care, and I hadn't been connected to
No.
him in any way. Like, it was just such a. It was like they cut me off from my
Plus,
own.
they cut away from these amazing fight sequences
Yeah.
that you're about to watch to see a scene that had zero importance.
Right.
Yeah.
Like had somebody crying in the hospital, and it didn't add any story or emotional impact. You just saw her like, what's going to happen with a Godzilla fighting
Right.
on a screen that you really want to see that?
Well, the good news is in this type of environment, when it's pure chaos, very easy to find people.
Clearly.
They're just right there around
Good
the
to
corner.
know.
See, I'm going to disagree about your stuff about Mary Kate and Ashley's sister.
Elizabeth. Her name is
I know,
Elizabeth.
Because I felt to her like, and when you're talking about the emotional thing about when he saw his dad die, I felt watching it like there was an instant transference because he knows that his dad's dead, but the world's in problem, and I've got a family,
Yeah.
and his intention instantly goes there. And to me, the importance of Elizabeth and the son and all that kind of stuff was not so that they could push the story themselves, but they rather became, what they call that crystal gem in the film, that they are his objective now. He is why he's agreeing to go and fight these monsters. They are why he is desperately trying to go back. They
didn't
become more
feel
that
that
anchor for him.
desperation,
I
though.
did. I felt it. And I totally get you didn't,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of other people
I
didn't
just
either.
didn't feel the desperation in him.
But let's move off those characters for a second.
Yeah.
Two other quick things that I felt were negatives. Number one, they pulled a Dark Knight Rises, where this little tugboat with 3 minutes to
Yeah.
go can get a nuclear bomb far enough away
Yes.
from the city in 3 minutes. Oh, and we're going to go pick up Aaron Taylor Johnson. We have a helicopter that can fly at 3,000 miles per
Yeah.
hour, so we'll be totally
like
clear of the blast radius.
Scooby-Doo wrap up.
And then the other scene was on the train bridge. The 140-foot story tall monster is very stealthy. Can't see him coming. Where is he? Like that, he sneaks up on them twice. Right.
He's on top of a mountain in shadow. You wouldn't hear
He
that?
glows.
Yeah.
He glows.
Yeah, see, that's the type of stuff that I guess for this movie didn't bother me as much because
Yeah.
that's the type of stuff that I suspend my disbelief on for the monster movies. Like, I'm like, okay, it's okay that they can't really hear him or from me in that point because I'm so invested in the fighting. It's the fact that, like you said, John, you just don't give a crap about Aaron Taylor
Yeah.
Johnson's story at that point because Cranston's energy is missing.
It's
But
gone. Yeah.
I did. Worked for me.
But I did like at the end there though too, where you think it's going to be all Johnson's. He's going to rescue the whole human race being on that boat, and it's all about Godzilla. See, I loved that. That's
that
what I
was
liked,
cool.
and that's what they did great was the fact that ultimately they tied it all back. Like this is the guy you came to see.
Right.
We tease you for a little bit, but you know what? When we give him to you, we are going to give him to you, and that's why I think people are going to leave it, even if they're disappointed going all the points we just hit. But it's impossible to leave that last scene and not be satisfied by that fight.
Yeah,
It's
but
impossible.
what I was saying to a friend of mine this morning over Twitter was like, some people are complaining about it took too long to get to the Godzilla and stuff like that. But to me, I thought it was a really nice chemistry of slow build up to the big payoff. It's like the girl who used to make me wait till the third date. But it was a really nice slow build to the payoff, right? And I felt that because I completely echo what you were saying, that when you got to that fight, I felt so emotionally satisfied by what was going on screen because of the way they built it up to get to that point. And yeah, on a visceral level, would I have liked 90 minutes of that? Sure, but then it would have been Pacific Rim.
Right.
And this was
it's
something
different
that legit,
movie.
and I like the way they did
They were
this.
going for
Mind
different
it.
things.
I didn't mind the waiting. I actually thought that
No,
that was
I
one of the
didn't either. I thought it was
pluses
good.
of the film was that, and I think Gareth Edwards is good at that. He's good at like holding back a little bit and then giving you what you want. And I think, like I said earlier, Godzilla is so beautiful a creature and so wonderful, and even the Mutos are just so wonderfully imagined, the way the female looks and the male looks and just the physiology of them. I was cool with that. What I would have liked to have seen, and this is with the big disappointment for me, is Cranston dying when it really should have been the relationship between Cranston and Godzilla.
I want to see, I want to see Cranston
that
at the end on a
relationship.
saddle on Godzilla, riding
Riding off
Godzilla
into
into
the
battle.
sunset.
Yeah, you know the other positive that we didn't talk about though too? The scream.
Yeah.
The scream
The
was
roar.
that
Yeah.
roar was
So
so
good.
good. Like, and then when they did it, and they didn't overuse it. They
Yeah,
did it
they
a couple
didn't.
times.
They had like 3 times,
And
I
the
think.
third
That's all
one
you
was
needed.
the gem.
As he's leaving,
Yeah.
as he's leaving
Yeah.
the city and he does it,
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
yeah.
As
Victory
soon
cry.
as,
Yeah.
as soon as he kills
And
the,
also-
the giant Muto.
Yeah, he
It's
just
way
throws
worth
people.
seeing in the theater just to have the entire you and the rest of the audience scream out when his tail lights up,
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you're like, you know what's gonna happen, and then he like blasts the creature with
Yeah.
like his nuclear
And it
breath.
looked great.
So good. So what I was gonna, 2 little things. One of the negatives of some of the special effects fight scenes at the end that I was wondering what you guys thought, because I was watching it and I was like, how come the sound is off? And I got that it's like we're watching it from a human's perspective, from like, the soldiers are doing their little thing, and I'd rather much be watching this fight scene, but even the sound effects of them fighting seemed like they were lowered. Now,
I
did that-
I
did you
didn't know.
notice
To be
that at
honest,
all?
I didn't
No, I
notice.
didn't notice.
All right, because it just felt like
Just
when
you.
Godzilla looks at him, and it just felt like all of a sudden all the sound effects were off.
Yeah, I didn't notice that
Okay,
myself.
good.
good. Maybe I'm gonna have to see it a second time. So my speakers
Well, maybe we'll
were-
watch it a second time, and now you've totally ruined it.
right.
Right. Now I'll watch it and go.
I actually
yeah,
loved-
Shep's right.
Excellent.
Just a quick positive to go with that is the whole scene when the soldiers are about to do the jump and they do that jump and it's from his POV. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
I thought,
it
I know
was
people
great.
want to see more of the fight. I thought that was so pitch perfect because you get the muffled sound in his ears and
Yeah.
you see just through the goggles and he's like trying to see and he can't see, and I felt like I was him. It was
Yeah.
like playing a video
Sure.
game
It was
almost. It
great.
was so immersive. It was so great.
I love that moment because
Yeah.
that was the
It was
moment, even
beautiful.
again, that was leading you into the fight. Like
Yeah.
those type of moments were great. You
Yeah,
know, like
that's
it
what he
wasn't.
does
It
so
didn't
well.
feel like filler. It felt like you're about to go on to this journey. It's the beginning. It's Michael Buffer announcing our fighters. You know,
Yeah.
that's what
go back
it
to
was.
the
So yeah. So when
And just the praying and the thing before, like that was the most
yeah.
tense moment in
I
the
almost
film
wish
for
it wasn't
me.
in the trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just that silence and they're all standing there and they're all gearing themselves up. It was so well done. I love that part.
And also, you have the visuals of them coming down through
Yeah.
the clouds with the red
Beautiful.
smoke coming down,
So
and then they
amazing.
see Godzilla.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
imagine if you were there with
Yeah.
Godzilla. You're like, oh
Yeah.
my god.
And I love how
Yeah.
they didn't have the monsters look at him and swipe at him.
Right,
Like,
right.
No, they
notice
don't
that
care.
they're there.
Inconsequential
They're
gnats.
so
Yeah.
tiny.
It was
They don't
great.
care.
But
Yeah.
here's the other thing too. I was a little bit afraid because when we saw this trailer and these guys jumping out,
Yeah.
the trailer gives you the impression they are carrying out the mission to stop these monsters, right?
Right.
Whereas the Transformers. And everybody knows how much I love the first Transformers, hated the second two. But in the Transformers, where no, the humans have to be instrumental in stopping the big threat. nah, this movie understood right away. We can't
that's
do
great.
crap
Right.
against these
And,
monsters.
and the plan went awry and was stupid anyways.
Yeah,
like the
right.
whole let's
Draw them
put a
out.
nuclear bomb near San Francisco.
Yeah.
That'll work out
So
really
Yeah,
well.
by the way,
That
they
was
eat
so-
them.
Yeah,
but
they're
it
not
was-
gonna move them at all.
Our guys, like us, we humans, our part was just to try to minimize external damage. That was it.
Right.
And the movie just kept focused on our only hope is Godzilla.
Yeah.
He's the one who's got to fight the monsters. We cannot stop them. And their mission was not to do something to the monster, plant a nuclear bomb inside its rectum or something like
Right,
that.
right,
That's-
right.
Though they
that
should have
stuff
done
was
that.
Also disappointing. I
Sequel.
found like David Strathairn, like that whole Navy side of the story, like it was dumb. I felt like it was dumb. I was like, I wanted that. If you're gonna bring in the Navy, like bring in the Navy, like make me feel like that's a new element in the plot. I just felt like it was like, yeah, sure, let's okay, that's not going to work. Let's just put it over there. Like it just felt very rushed and not that well realized.
You know, I liked
for me.
it. I actually kind of liked that only because it reminded me of the old school Godzilla. It was kind of it reminded me of how it used to be set up in the old films, and it was kind of the same dynamic there. That finally, when we got there,
They always had the
worked.
army that
Yeah,
are
you had the
stupid.
dopey armies.
They were
Yeah.
always
Army
stupid.
is
In the old
stupid.
movies, they were like, just in this movie, they're like, I guess Godzilla will fight the other monsters, so he's our friend. Yes, now fire upon
Right,
him.
right.
Shoot at him while he's trying to help. Yes, do that.
But then there was the whole thing between Strathairn, I never say his name right, and Ken Watanabe is like trying to tell him, and he's like, I know you don't want me to do this, but
Right.
I'm going to do this. I know you don't want me to do this, but I'm going
Right.
to do this. Oh, you were right. Like it's
Yeah.
just kind of the
Cliche.
rhythm of that realization
Can I just
was
say
off
one
for
of
me.
my favorite scenes was towards the end when the Muto, it's like Aaron Taylor Johnson's like, I better run over and get to that, the boat with the nuclear bomb on it, and then that Muto just kills them
Yeah.
instantly, and then those other dudes are shooting at it, then it kills
Yeah,
them,
it's like-
mercilessly, just just kills like 30
With its
dudes.
little
Yeah, with this little pincery thing. And I was just like, that's so awesome, because that's what they used to do in all the Godzilla movies.
Yeah,
They'd be
it's
like,
great.
see those 15 tanks that are shooting at Rodan? Rodan would just like kill all of them. You just see tanks flying, so they're dead.
All
It's
right.
not like they climb out.
Well,
No.
it's we
They
got to
cannot.
give our wrap up here. Let's give our wrap up overall impression and score. Snep, we're going to start with you. Just wrap it up and give us your score out of 10.
All right, my favorite parts obviously were of the monster, the realization of how they shot Godzilla, the Godzilla scenes. I just got tired of them cutting away from what I was there to see. Once they set everything up great, they got all the gears in motion, and they kept bait and switching me. So I felt, as an audience member, somewhat disappointed and frustrated. They did finish out a good action scene towards the end, so the last 30 minutes were great. But all the human elements to it, to me, just felt mechanical story plot devices. I didn't feel connected. So Godzilla and his Muto friends get a 9. All the humans and their dumb story, scriptwriter, horrible plot device, emotionless crap gets a 3. So together I give it a 6.
All right. Mary?
I agree, actually. I feel like those strong elements of the film are, again, look and feel, the monsters, how beautifully they're rendered, how beautifully they're realized, some of the shots, some of the just physical aspects of the film are so well done, the fight scenes. But again, the human elements were so disappointing and half-baked and not well realized. For me, it's a 6 also.
Christian?
For me, I think that what a lot of people from hearing, like I thought we were going to get Godzilla a lot more, going and knowing I hadn't heard anything about it. So I think people that have been hearing about it and knowing it, I actually think will like it a lot more, knowing that that's when you're going to get Godzilla is towards the end. I think if you're prepared for that, you won't care as much about the problems that the three of us had with the human story. I do think that Bryan Cranston is absolutely worth seeing. The little he's in this movie is worth seeing his performance.
Amen.
Godzilla is back for me, and that alone to watch. I could go see this movie again in theaters just because of that, and because, like you said, Mary, the experience of how it looked. I'm
beautiful.
going higher. I'm going to go 7.5 out of
Ooh.
10.
Dennis?
Well, I'm going to go higher than you. I'm going to go. I'm going to give it an 8.0. Yes, there are problems with it, and definitely it's a slow burn, and there's a little suspense. But I do like the world that Gareth Edwards creates. He does a very good job of kind of more of a bird's eye view of showing the world. There's a lot of shots. We were talking about the scale of Godzilla. The cool thing about that is they would do pan shots of like the monsters and then pan them down to like the characters running and stuff like that, and also with the characters in their situations, and you see in the background the giant monsters. So and they did Godzilla right. I mean, yes, I wish we had seen more of him. I wish there had been more action with him. I think in the sequel they will deliver because they won't have to do all the suspense of what is Godzilla,
Yes.
who is he, blah blah blah. So they'll delve right into that, but they delivered in the end, and so ultimately I was pretty satisfied.
And for me, it's like, yeah, problems with a little false selling on how much Cranston was in the film. Ultimately, Cranston's footprint on the film was minimized by the fact that it ultimately didn't lead to any kind of solution or anything like that. The little things like the magic nuclear bomb on the boat that suddenly went 50,000 miles per hour, the stealthy 100-story-foot tall monster
Yes.
that can't be seen. But to me, all of that is completely overshadowed. I know for you three, the character development and the emotional connection didn't work. But for me, I'm sitting there and I was watching the film and it worked for me.
Cool.
It did bring me into it. So I think you're going to find I'm sure a lot of you guys who saw the film, it didn't work. I think for some of you like me, it did work. But for me, that's a positive. And to me, it felt like a nice slow burn when it comes to Godzilla and the creatures, culminating in this great climax, the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes,
Yeah, it's
this
perfect.
incredible, I mean, the giant monster fight, I think, was better than anything we saw in Pacific Rim. And you all know how much I like Pacific Rim. I like that movie a lot. And I ended up walking out with a big smile on my face. I'm going to go with Dennis, and I'm actually going to give this an 8.0. Myself as well. So we got 6, 6, 7.5, 8, and 8. And so jump in the comments section and let us know what you thought of Godzilla. What were some of your positives, some of your negatives? What kind of score out of 10 would you give it? So, yeah, I think our next spoiler review is actually going to be X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
Which we are so psyched for seeing. I'm going to see it on Tuesday night. I am so excited.
on Tuesday morning.
So anything like it. So anyway, for John Schnepp, Miri Jedikin, Christian Harloff, Dennis Zen, my name's John Cabia. Thanks so much for joining us, folks. Don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you check out AMC Mailbag this weekend. Watch us Monday through Friday on AMC Movie Talk. You know the whole deal. And right now, lots of great films playing at AMC theaters, including Godzilla. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and movie ticket information. So for all of us, Ray Orr over there doing the cutting and the editing, thank you guys for joining us. My name's John Cabia, and until next time, bye-bye.
Hey everyone, if you liked this video, click that thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. It's free and helps you stay up to date with all the latest movie news, as well as our daily AMC Movie Talk show. Also, make sure that you follow us on Facebook and Twitter to stay up to date with all of our special promotions, contests, and prize giveaways.